Global trade looks effortless. Containers sail across oceans, money flows across borders. Markets in Tokyo close just as New York opens, and London is already trading while most people are still asleep. It feels seamless, almost magical, but that smooth surface hides a fragile reality. In times of tension, global supply chains are not just lines on a map, they are levers of power. A tiny strait can control energy prices. A single canal can dictate the speed of commerce. Nearly 20% of the world's oil moves through a waterway just 21 miles wide. One canal in Egypt handles more than 10% of global trade. Back in 2021, when a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, it jammed $10 billion worth of goods every day for nearly a week. The global financial system may run on satellites and spreadsheets, but it is still funneled through narrow corridors of land and water. And when those corridors get blocked, capital tightens just as quickly. This is the story of why certain strategic choke points, strips of water, narrow straits, and vital canals have always influenced global finance. Not just wars, not just empires, but inflation, currency dominance, debt crises, and global instability. Because when geography compresses trade, leverage emerges, and leverage under pressure becomes power. The idea that globalization connects everything evenly is an illusion. Trade flows through arteries, and arteries can be blocked. History shows this pattern clearly. In the 5th century BCE, the Hellespont, the narrow strait linking the Aegean to the Black Sea, became critical for the Persian Empire. Xerxes built pontoon bridges across it in his 480 BCE campaign against Greece. Why? Because control of that narrow waterway meant control over grain shipments from the Black Sea region, a lifeline for Athens. This wasn't simply military strategy, it was economic strategy. Athens relied on imported grain. Interrupt the flow and you destabilize food prices. Destabilize food prices and you destabilize governments. Geography created leverage. Leverage fueled conflict. Conflict reshaped power. Jump forward to 1869 and the Suez Canal opened, transforming global trade. Ships no longer needed to sail around the Cape of Good Hope. Journeys between Europe and Asia became dramatically shorter. Costs dropped, commerce accelerated, but with shorter routes came concentrated power. The British Empire recognized this immediately. India, the jewel in Britain's crown, was now just a canal away. When Egypt's ruler, Ismail Pasha, faced massive debts in 1875, Britain bought a controlling stake in the canal company. It wasn't generosity, it was strategy. Control of Suez ensured access to Asian trade, strengthened London's financial primacy, and cemented the pound sterling as the dominant currency. Banks, insurers, and financiers all benefited. Maritime dominance directly translated into financial dominance. By the late 19th century, London had become the world's clearinghouse. Trade bills, insurance policies, sovereign debt, all were denominated in sterling. Control of global trade routes reinforced monetary influence. But control is never permanent. In 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, challenging British and French dominance. Britain, France, and Israel responded militarily, but the United States, wary of Soviet involvement and global financial instability, pressured Britain to retreat. The crisis revealed a hard truth. Britain's financial power had limits. Its foreign reserves couldn't back the pound indefinitely. Sterling faltered, and the US dollar's ascent accelerated. Geography had shifted, power had shifted, and finance followed. Control of key choke points wasn't just strategic, it was monetary. Waterways aren't the only choke points. Energy flows are equally sensitive. The Strait of Hormuz between Iran and Oman channels roughly 1/5 of the world's oil. That is not just a statistic, it is leverage. In 1973, following the Yom Kippur War, OPEC's oil embargo sent prices soaring. Energy-dependent economies faced inflation spikes and contractions simultaneously. Stagflation, high inflation alongside high unemployment, shattered post-war assumptions. The disruption didn't begin in central banks or money printers. It began in a narrow geographic corridor. When oil tightens at choke points, prices surge, rippling through transport, manufacturing, food, and heating. Central banks respond with higher interest rates. Debt servicing costs rise. Governments feel the strain. Currency valuations shift. Geography, quite literally, drives economic outcomes. The late 1970s repeated the lesson. The Iranian Revolution caused another oil shock, pushing prices up again. Paul Volcker, chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve, responded with aggressive interest rate hikes. The federal funds rate exceeded 19%, inducing a deep recession. But eventually, inflation was contained. This is the chain reaction: choke point disruption, commodity price spike, inflation surge, monetary tightening, debt stress. Sometimes inflation doesn't start at the printing press, it starts at a narrow stretch of water. Even climate shifts can create choke points. In 2023 and 2024, drought limited the Panama Canal's capacity, forcing delays and higher freight costs. A canal built in 1914, a strategic engineering marvel, became vulnerable to weather. Globalization, it turns out, is conditional, not frictionless. What ties all these examples together is compression. Trade forced through narrow corridors creates leverage, and leverage shapes finance. Insurance premiums rise when routes are threatened. Commodity prices adjust to perceived risk. Bond yields shift with inflation expectations. Currency values respond to trade imbalances. Markets are hypersensitive to physical geography. Integration increases dependency. Dependency creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates pricing power, and pricing power translates into influence over inflation, monetary policy, and capital flows. A single grounded ship or a missile strike in a critical strait can ripple through markets worldwide. Take the Strait of Hormuz in late February 2026. U.S. and Israeli strikes targeting Iran triggered missile exchanges and regional tension. Markets reacted immediately, not due to ideology, but because 1/5 of global oil passes through that strait. Tanker traffic slowed, insurance premiums spiked, and energy futures surged. This is structure, not speculation. The broader economic backdrop amplifies these risks. Sovereign debt levels are historically high, corporate leverage is elevated, and households carry significant credit obligations. Central banks are balancing post-pandemic inflation with fragile growth. In such conditions, supply shocks hit harder. Disruption in key choke points can weaken currencies, strain fiscal balances, and force investors to demand higher yields. Other choke points remain critical. The Red Sea shipping lanes have faced regional disruptions. The Panama Canal's drought-induced constraints limited transit. The Taiwan Strait threatens semiconductor supply. Each is a node in the global network. Global trade has been optimized for efficiency, not redundancy. Just-in-time logistics minimize storage costs, but reduce buffer space. When continuity is threatened, volatility spikes. Container shipping costs during the pandemic surged multiple times, driving commodity prices up and forcing central banks to tighten aggressively, all triggered by physical disruption. Choke points do not cause inflation by themselves, but they can ignite it. They do not alone topple currencies, but they can accelerate capital flight.
They do not guarantee recession, but they increase the probability of costly monetary miscalculations. Markets are fast, brutal, and calculated. They respond to constraints, not sentiments. Markets may appear digital, but they are anchored in physical reality. When these corridors tighten, money moves with them. Strategic choke points compress trade into controllable spaces, influence supply, affect prices, drive inflation, determine monetary policy, and shape credit conditions. Geography doesn't care about ideology. It doesn't care about central bank independence. It simply constrains. History doesn't repeat itself, but geography doesn't change. The next time markets react sharply to news from a distant strait or canal, remember, finance is not floating above the world, it is anchored to it. If you want to protect your wealth in today's interconnected world, understanding these choke points is just as important as understanding balance sheets. Awareness is the first step towards resilience. To stay ahead in a world where trade, energy, and finance all run through narrow choke points, make sure you follow for more insights. Understanding how these hidden levers work is one of the best ways to protect your wealth and navigate an interconnected global economy. History shows the patterns. Knowing them gives you an edge.